Hello everybody, how's it going? It's your boy, it is Snake Martin, and I'm back with another video for you. Today, I want to take you on a trip down memory lane. Back when I was a little boy, and I was playing games for the very first time on my Sega Mega Drive. Genesis to other people of the world. Now, I was a big fan of my Mega Drive. It wasn't actually mine at the time, it was my sister's. One of the first games I ever played was a Disney game. And that's what I want to talk about today, our Disney games. Did you ever play a Disney game? I know I played quite a few in my childhood, and I feel like they were a staple of most households. So if you did play a Disney game, what one was it and on what console? Now, one of the first games I would have ever played was The Jungle Book. A great film, weird ending. Can't believe he just leaves Bagheera and Baloo after everything they went through. Spoilers. But also a great game. Very, very hard game. I did finish this as a kid, but my goodness, was it tough. These games are all pretty hard when you were a kid. It was as if they were made for the parents to play and the kids to watch, because my goodness, I think I may have finished this game once. Thank goodness they put passwords in. Back in the day, we didn't have save systems as we do now. We didn't have autosaves for sure. We had passwords every so many levels, and this was one that utilized it. Now, I used to adore this game. Used to play as Mowgli, throwing bananas and things like that. I think the most powerful fruits are coconuts, things like that. Used to do more damage, and it was a really fun little platformer. That was probably one of the first games I ever played. Now, Disney used to make bangers. Now, Disney used to license their films to lots of game companies. I'm not sure who exactly made this. Looking at the box, it says Virgin and Disney Software and Sega. So one of those three must have made this game. Who? No idea. This was probably one of the first games I played, and I loved it. A very old film that they decided to make a game of. And I guess back in the day, Disney used to re-release their films every 7 years or so. So it probably would have coincided with one of those VHS releases of those films. However, one of the first games I ever owned, I'm trying to think whether I had my Game Boy first or second to this. I think my Game Boy came after this. But as I said, it was my sister's Sega Mega Drive, but this was my game because I loved this film, Toy Story. This game I've talked about on the channel before. It was incredible. A 2D platformer that was difficult to navigate. You had really cool objectives, and they also messed around a lot with the actual type of game that it was. Most of the time, you would play as Woody in a 2D platformer. However, every now and again, they would mix that formula up. You'd have top-down Micro Machine type levels where you play as RC Car. Sometimes you'd have these weird, creepy 3D levels that were kind of like old school Doom, but more of a dungeon crawler. It was amazing. They were so clever with how they made these games. These were made by Traveller's Tales, who also nowadays you'll know for making all the cool Lego games that we get. But this was their jam back then. There were so many cool Disney games that Traveller's Tales would make and come to make that were part of my life. And I just loved this. One thing I used to love about this was you used to get screen grabs from the film as well. So before you got to even own the film on video, you would be able to kind of see the film that you saw in the cinema. It was so cool. And it gets even better as time goes on to the PlayStation. Now, the PlayStation is where a lot of my Disney love came, especially in game form. I actually think I liked Disney games more than I liked the films back then. And one that was my absolute childhood was this game. Disney, it's got a really crap name. Disney's action game featuring Hercules is the official title. It says it on the spine. Why is it not just called Hercules? God knows. But this game was fantastic. It was made by Eurocom, and it was this 2D, beautiful. Even by today's standard, it all looks hand-drawn. The levels are really tricky and difficult. and you have to play it on the harder modes to actually get the proper ending. And as I mentioned before about getting those screen grabs of the films, this game and the next few games took it to a whole new level, because then they started to reward you with film clips as you finished each level. So you almost got to experience the whole film in game form from just playing the levels and finishing the game. And I'm sure this was the way that a lot of kids would have experienced films back then. I remember having a conscious choice as a kid, being like, well, I could watch the film, or I could play the game and then watch the film clips too. And this is such a lost form now. We don't get this anymore. We just don't. We always have Netflix or Disney Plus and things like that, where that could never be a reward in a game anymore. We get it in cutscenes now in these big blockbuster titles like The Last of Us. This was rewarding you with actual films. Literal films on the disc. It was crazy, and you just can't replicate that now. Another huge one, big one on the channel. I've tried speedrunning this blind multiple times. Bugs Life, again, another evolution, a 3D game this time with little objectives. Really interesting how they tie the game into the plot, because it's a bit weird, and sometimes you almost get new parts of the film with this. So there's a part where you really get to explore the city when they get to the city as Flick and he's looking for the circus bugs, and you just wouldn't have had that in the film. They can't budget it in the film, but with Bugs Life the game, you can do it, and you can explore and you can see all behind the camera. And it was just such a cool way to make these games tie into the films. And I genuinely think that it's a lost art form now. All of these types of games were just so good for expanding the plot. I remember Tarzan, and one of my favorite parts in the film is the trashing the camp scene, where they make music with random instruments from the human bit of the camp with Turk and everybody. And it was so cool. And you get to do that in the game. And this game is really cool. It's that 2.5D platformer, and you just don't get that anymore. You talk about Klonoa and things, and yeah, I guess these probably stole from those games, but we just have it in such a great way to experience a film and a game at the same time. I blimmin' love these. It is just a lost art now. Now, Toy Story 2, I actually think changed the game. I think this was actually a bit revolutionary for me as a kid. The way that the levels work, they give you objectives in the level. So you almost had a percentage thing each time, kind of a collectathon, normal action game. But also, one thing that I haven't really stressed enough is how hard all these games were for you as a kid. They were solid. This game particularly had one of the hardest boss fights ever. I don't know if it's as hard now. I haven't played it for, gosh, years and years, apart from maybe the first level a few times when it came to PlayStation 5 on the PS Plus program, and also through emulation, things like that. You just can't get games like this where they really challenge you nowadays. I mean, people think Dark Souls is hard. I say give them Toy Story 2 and tell me how you beat the last boss, because it's really hard. Really hard. 3 bosses in one. Really tricky. What happened to it? I mean, I guess we didn't need tie-ins anymore. We got so used to having crappy tie-ins. But back in my childhood anyway, especially on the PS1, they used to put in so much effort, and you could see it, that these people loved the games. I would love to speak to someone that made any of these games, because I bet they would have loved that process. And it was a much quicker process back then making a game, I feel. And I think that's quite sad that we don't get these tie-ins anymore, at least with the effort that they did. I used to play a few extra ones when I was a lot older, but more for trophy hunting. I remember playing, I think it was Up, and it was about a 4-hour game, easy to platinum, and it just was a bore fest, if I'm honest. They didn't put in that level of care, I think, to the game. Wall-E was another one. And it was really interesting because, like I said with the Jungle Book, you had different versions depending on what platform you were on. Now, they re-released some of these games a few years ago on PlayStation 4, I believe. And it was like Aladdin, maybe Jungle Book, and Lion King in one go. I was really excited for it. I was like, amazing, get some trophies on this. However, when I went to play it, or when I went to look it up, it turns out that they just had the Super Nintendo versions on it. The Sega had amazing music. The colors were different. It kind of had this 3D look to it, where I think the Super Nintendo looked a lot more flat. And that's not the game I loved, unfortunately. It just isn't. Same with Toy Story. I was gutted when I discovered that it didn't have the Sega versions on it. Actually, it was kind of my awakening to the fact that there's so many different versions of these games that were ported, sometimes made by different people. And it's just a bugger, I think, nowadays. We don't get these things anymore. We can just put on Disney Plus. We don't need to play these games when there were better games out there, I'm sure. But it's just an art form that I think has been completely lost. And tie-ins and Disney, I wish there was more of it. Axe? What are you... My cat? What are you doing, pal? You've never once stood on there in your life. I miss this from my childhood. I really do. We don't get these Disney games anymore. I don't think we get very many tie-ins even. I think we got Disney Speedstorm the other day, which was a kind of knockoff kart racer, but it felt more like a phone game that they put on the consoles, you know? We don't get them anymore. It just feels like it's a cash grab as opposed to something that they really, truly have worked on. Thankfully though, I am a big fan of Kingdom Hearts. So where I did fall off with tie-ins, I did get into my Kingdom Hearts games. And what a series this is. If you like Disney and you want to go explore these worlds and see an alternate take on them, Kingdom Hearts is the way. So yeah, closing that chapter of my life, really, and I miss these games a lot. It is one of those things that time has forgotten, and it's sad that I think a lot of kids these days won't get to play and experience these games. I'm thankful to PlayStation and emulation and things for trying to re-release these again, but I think they'll just be considered a bit jank for kids nowadays. So it is what it is. But as always, tell me in the comments, what was your favorite Disney games? What ones did you play as a kid? I'd love to know, so let me know. And thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you too. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care, and toodaloo.